Okay, sorry, a few minutes later. Good evening. So this next week, obviously, there's no share because it's Rosh Hashanah. The week after Mitzvah Shem, hopefully there will be. Who knows why not? Monday night. Last time I checked, wasn't. It's Tuesday night, right?
Yeah, next night.
I think so. Yeah. The only thing is, there'll probably be, they'll be selling Arba minimum in the shul, but it doesn't matter. That shouldn't affect. I think so. Anyway, we'll update as things. Okay. Now we are up to. We're in the middle of this this sugya about whether you can believe Adim, right? When it's clear that they are, there's a very good chance they're lying about some of it. In other words, the Adim contradict each other. Yeah, we had the case was basically you have two people. One says it belongs to, they both say that they were there for 3 years, and they both say that they belong to their ancestors. But one of them brings Adim that they were there for 3 years and it belongs to ancestors. And the other one just brings Adim that they're there for 3 years, but nothing to do with Avoisai, my ancestors. And we had a machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rava. Rav Nachman says that we'll cancel out the usage of the land because they're contradicting each other, and you're left with the one set of Adim who say that it belongs to this guy's ancestors. So you give it to him. And Rava says, how can you do that? It's Eidos Mulcheshes. It's Eidos which contradicts each other. It's completely contradictory because at the end of the day, one of them is definitely possible for every Eidos because they're lying, and therefore they're possible Eidim. Therefore you can't believe them on anything at all. Okay? And since you can't clarify who's believed or not, therefore the Eidos is completely nullified, right? And Rav Nachman says no, because everyone agrees. There's no debate about the Eidos that it belongs to the ancestor. No one, because only one set of Eidim is talking about that, so no one's disputing that. So why should they not be believed on that? If you remember, we did Tosfos, and Tosfos turns this a bit on its head. Tosfos says, why does Rava say that Eidos is completely contradicted? At the end of the day, it's only contradicted from the point onwards, from that point onwards. Remember, from when they say that statement. But things they testified before then, it's not a problem. So here there should be believability still on the Eidos that it belongs to the ancestors. And Tosfos had a pshat which we saw as well in that, which we probably is quite involved. But basically the idea was that the two bits of it are intrinsically linked. They're kind of tied together. If the Eidos about it belongs to his ancestors is by itself, it doesn't help. It's not enough. They're tied together. It's not like when someone steals something and then shechts it, where there's two separate things. They're unrelated. Remember, that's what Tosfos went through. But anyway, that's what we're left with. So now we're going to explore in greater detail. The Gemora now is going to look into those two opinions of Rav and Rav Nachman. That's what you have to remember. Rav and Rav Nachman, those are the key two views. Rava says that there is nothing, the Eidos is completely destroyed, right? Because one of them is lying in one area, and Rav Nachman says no, leave aside the lying bit, leave aside the contradictory bit, and you can believe the other one on part of it. And on that the Gemara says, Leima Rava for Rav Nachman. Let's say that Rava and Rav Nachman they have a machlokas, they debate, and they're the same machlokas as Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. We're at top of the Amud. Sorry, we're on the first line of Lamed Aleph on the base.
What we had last week is they were changing their Eidos. That we left that behind. Remember, they had one story.
No, we don't finish that. That was previous sugya. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No one's changing their Eidos yet. There is another piece to the story, but not about changing Eidos. Yeah. So Rav Huna and Rav Chisda have the following machlokas. To Itma, it was taught, and we're going to try and see if the two machlokas can kind of match up. Rav Huna and Rav Chisda match Rav and Rav Nachman. Itma beis kitei Eidim hamachisha zu. You have two groups of Eidim who contradict one another. Amar Rav Huna zu bo b'fnei atzmo mi'ido, v'zu bo b'fnei atzmo mi'ido. Rav Huna says this one comes by itself, can testify by itself, and the other one can come by itself and testify. That's Rav Huna's opinion.
Zoom refers to the pair of Eidim or individually?
A very good question, which Rashbam will deal with. The simple pshat is, and this is clear, and it must be the case, that it means each group. So Zoom means the group. So each independent group of Eidim, there are 2 and 2, can testify about another case, an unrelated case. That's what they're talking about. In other words, we have a situation where 2 Eidim are contradicting each other. Now, as Rosh is going to spell out, what does it mean to contradict? Not Eidim Zomin, nothing to do with Eidim Zomin, contradictory Eidus, right? So you have one set of Eidim that say so-and-so borrow money from someone else, and the other set of Eidim say, they come along and say, he did not borrow money from him at all. And I'll prove it to you, because we testify that that day that you say the borrower borrowed money, he was with us somewhere else. That's not Eidim Zomin. He was with us, the borrower, not the Eidim. He was with us, right?
Right,
Yeah. That's the case Rashbam deals with. So that's, well, obviously the scenario is where the facts were clear. No, you're right. You can borrow money with the shliach for sure. Interesting shayla. You can do a prusbul with the shliach. Interesting shayla. Can you send the shliach to the prusbul? That's inani. It's an inani diyam shayla. I think there's stories about some who did I think sometimes. Anyway, whatever.
It's only when you say the Eidim were with us.
Yes. What do you mean?
The Eidim could not have said what they said because they were with us.
Yeah, that's Eidim Zomin, precisely. Eidim
Zomin.
Zomin, you need to think of in a totally separate category because it's a Gezeres HaKosov. The Torah tells us that in this particular set of circumstances, even though logically there is no reason to believe the second set above the first set, the Torah tells you do. That's the Chiddush of Eidim Zomin. There's a whole thing in Makkos, the Gemora says it's a number of occasions, right? The whole piece of Eidim Zomin is a Chiddush. Why should you believe the second set? Believe the first set, 2 against 2. And Torah comes along and tells you, no, you believe the second set. Why is it a chok? Whatever. No, we learn Makkos, right? But the point is, it's nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's the key point, right? So here you have 2 Eidim that are contradicting each other, Eidim Machishim. Rav Huna says, okay, so they're contradicting itself. They're contradicting, right? But if there's another Eidus in play, the next day, one of these sets of Eidim knock on the door of Beis Din and say, we know Eidus for this case. The case that's on the cards, that's it's coming in front of the court today. We are able to testify. So Beis Din say, great, thank you very much. We'll listen to you. Rav Huna, that's what Rav Huna says. Why should they not be able to testify in other cases? Rav Chisda Omar. Rav Chisda says, Bahadi Sadi Shikri Lomali. Why do I want to have anything to do with these Eidei Shikorim, these false Eidim? I want nothing to do with them. Now we need to understand exactly what the machlokes is. I mean, we have to always understand these type of things. We've got to know what we call the Nakudas HaMachlokes is. What is the point of the machlokes? It's easy saying, Rav Huna says you can testify elsewhere because they're only disproved in this area, but they're not disproved permanently. And remember, we don't know who's lying.
It's only sure one's lying.
Yes, one must be lying.
That I thought he borrowed money and they said no.
There's no way of resolving it. There's no way of resolving it. Yeah, it's clear one set is lying, but it's only 50%. So 50-50 they're liars. 50-50. So we need to understand what exactly the machlokes is. We'll see the Rashbam. You understand why is it that Rav Chisda says what he says, and why does Rav Huna say what he says? It's easy saying that they each say it, but why, right? What makes them? What drives them? Why is it that Rav Chisda says, I don't want anything to do with these Eidim. They're possible for all Eidos. And again, it's only a sophic. It's not like we know who's lying. We don't know for sure, right?
One of how you said is that the aid was, in this case, is the guy.
Yeah, in monoisim is the Eidim. That's Eidim Zomin. In monoisim is you were with us, you the Eidim.
With us. And this
That's
case,
right.
This guy was
Precisely. Or indeed any other scenario where there's contradictions. That's also not Eidim Zomin. Like, for example, our case. Right, where they can't both have used the land for 3 years. They can't both have been in the land, right?
Is it possible the land is so big that they wouldn't see each other?
No. That's the same thing Eli was saying. No, we have to take the facts as they are, or as one of the teachers in Hasmonean used to say, when it happens, ask me. It doesn't. That's not the case. Meaning, like. Anyway, yeah, exactly. No, I'm saying you can always say, what if the facts were X, Y, Z, but they're not. So we're not, that we'll deal with them as they are. Now you can see how the Gemara wants to suggest that the opinions line up. The Gemara says Leimor, right? Rav Nachman de Omak Ravuna. Rav Nachman, who says we don't believe in our case, we can't use the Eidos at all. It would seem that he holds at Ravuna. But Rava Rav Chisda, and Rava holds at Rav Chisda. Rava says you can't. Rava says what's the other way around? Sorry, Rav Nachman says you can use the Eidos for a certain thing. That's the same as Ravuna. Let them testify in a different area. Rava Rav Chisda and Rava Rav Chisda. Rava says forget the Eidim entirely. That's going to be the same as Rav Chisda, who says forget the Eidim completely. Right? The opinions seem to match up in that way. Lo says no. Ali but Rav Chisda kuli amalo pligi. According to Rav Chisda, there is no way of resolving it. It is not possible for Rav Nachman to hold like Rav Chisda, okay? Because Rav Chisda says, that they are completely possible for any edus, even a completely different topic, completely different subject. They are no good. Bahadi Sadi Shikri Lomi. I want nothing to do with these Ede Shakarim. Clearly, Rav Nachman, right, cannot go like Rav Chisda. Because what does Rav Nachman say?
You can blue pencil the Eidos.
Yeah, you can like portion out and even sever the same Eidos. Rav Nachman goes like much further, even in the same topic, the same subject. So clearly he can't hold back Rav Chisda. So that's what the Gemara means when it says, according to Rav Chisda, no one disagrees that Rav Chisda clearly must go like Rava and not like Rav Nachman, right? But the machlokas between Rava and Rav Nachman, they have a debate within the opinion of Rav Huna. You understand the way they go? Ki pligi, when they argue, their argument only starts or follows on from Rav Huna's opinion. So you've got to structure this kind of like Rav Chisda is out there on a limb. I mean, he's not, but you understand, he's clear, he's black and white, right? These Eidim are no good for anything ever. So he's obviously...
Even though they're a 50-50.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even though it's a suffix, and we'll see why. That's why we have to see why. Exactly. But they're disqualified completely. We can't use them for any Eidos in the world, right? That's Rav Chisda. Rav Huna is a bit more nuanced, because Rav Huna says, it's okay, if a future Eidos comes up, if a future opportunity for Eidos comes up, that's all right, as long as they don't come together. That's what Rav Huna says. Zubor b'fnei atzmo meida, v'zubor b'fnei atzmo meida, right? As long as they come independently and they don't come to Beis Din together, or indeed, as the Rashbam says, you can't have one aid from each group forming a third set, which I think that's what you were getting at, right? You can't, maybe not, but you can't have one. No, but you were talking about one aid from each, but you can't have one from each coming together and forming a new group. Why?
They school each other, maybe.
No, because then you have no. You've got two sets of Eidim who contradict each other. No, see, one of them is lying. So if you take one aid from each group, you've got 100% lying. Let me see. You've got one set that say X and one set that say Y. Okay, 50%. They're 50-50 because one of them are lying. We don't know who. One group are lying.
They contaminate the third set.
If I take one aid from each set and make a new group, I'm definitely ruined, right? You understand? Because one of them is 100% lie. They are part of your Eidos.
Group is
The group contains, for certain, a liar.
If someone is found to have lied during
Yeah.
100% proven, no suspect.
Yeah.
Are they ever allowed to do this again?
No, absolutely not. 100%. Yeah, that's Sanhedrin, exactly. Sanhedrin, yeah. I mean, Sanhedrin goes much further. Sanhedrin disqualifies people for all sorts of reasons, like you're a Guslan or he's a, exactly, all sorts of things like exactly. So there's all sorts of reasons a person would be disqualified from Eidos. But certainly if a person is found to be a liar, I mean, you can ask an interesting question about them doing teshuvah. Can they get out of it? Some people have the minhag too, if they're asked to be an Eid Kiddushin, to do teshuvah before they give aid, before they serve as an aid. There is such a minhag. What? Yeah. I mean, look, it's not like that's like, okay, fine, but it's like a chumrah to do for the chuppah, so that, just the sort of, because everyone does things wrong. So, just to make sure they're 100% 100% good Eidim. There's such a minhag. There's such a minhag. No. It's just not. No, it's not. It's not a formula. It's not important. I don't think important halacha that you need to do that, but there is such a minhag. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the thing now. Now. So there we are. So once you've got Rav Huna's opinion, I said a more nuanced opinion. Rav Huna says that they are allowed to go independently, each group independently, and testify in another case. Within Rav Huna's opinion, we can now move on to Rava and Rav Nachman, right? Look at this. The Gemora says like this: Kiflig yali b'd Rav Huna. The machlokes between Rava and Rav Nachman is according to Rav Huna. Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman goes like Rav Huna. That's straightforward because Rav Nachman says, "I'm even going to go further than Rav Huna," right? Yes. Rav Huna says they can testify for another case, and I'm going to say that I'll allow them to testify about. I'll believe the edus in this case that was about the father, so that's fine, right? So I go like Rav Huna. But Rava will say, I'm also like Rav Huna. You know when Rav Huna disqualified them, that was only for another edus. Sorry, that's only when he allowed them. When did Rav Huna allow them to testify? For another edus, totally separate, unrelated. Not for this self-same edus, right? Rava says that even Rav Huna, even Rav Huna, who allows and says they can testify for another subject, he doesn't allow it for this one. He doesn't allow you to what was the phrase you used, Paul, to pencil off or whatever. No, well, yeah. Exactly. You're right. It doesn't allow you to do that, Robert says, and that's why my view, he says, is consistent with Rav Huna. So basically what's happened is that Rava says I can reconcile my view according to both Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Okay? They're all Amorai.
So what are we trying to do?
Well, we're trying to narrow down opinions. We're not saying that it's a problem if they argue, right? But we're trying to hone and almost like work out exactly what Rav and Rav Nachman's machlokes is about, and we're doing that through the lens, if you like, of Rav and Rav Chisda. The Gemora takes on that it's the same machlokes. Well, the shittas just match up. One goes like one, but then one says no, not at all. It could well be that actually, that Rav Huna fits with both opinions, right? And it's only Rav Chisda that doesn't. And by the way, you see also why they want to do the halachas like Rav Huna. So it's good if you know what I mean, because if Rav Huna, if the machlokas between Rava and Rav Nachman is in Rav Huna, then it all fits nicely because we paskin like Rav Huna, so it makes sense that they then have a debate within his opinion because you've established that as the halacha. I mean, I haven't looked up Shulchan Aruch, but you can see that the what's it called, the ois for the ein mishpat is there, which tells you the halacha. So I'm assuming the halacha is like Rav Huna, right? So that's you with me. So it's better to go through it in that way, yeah. So that's not the end of the sugya, but that's the end of the first half of the sugya. The next part of the sugya, we're going to do Rashbam first. The next part of the sugya is what is where the other guy and then comes up with more edim. In other words, at the moment, who's going to get the land? According to Rav Nachman, not Rav Nachman. Yeah, the guy who's got the Eidim. Remember, Rava says, forget it, I'm not interested in the Eidim at all. Rav Nachman says, no, it's no problem, I'm going to give it to the guy who's got the Eidim for the ancestors, right? Yeah, okay? And that's how it is. Rav Nachman's always very, very strong, remember, in Choshen Halacha, Rav Nachman Bedini. Hilchos Rav Nachman Bedini. Generally, we paskin the halacha like Rav Nachman when it comes to Choshen Mishpat. So whenever you see Rav Nachman, you've got to have like a big kind of highlight around his name, because what was that? Warning sign. Well, it's not so much a warning. It's just that the generally speaking, it says generally speaking, halacha is like Rav Nachman. So that means you'll often find the big discussions in the Gemora, often whatever around Rav Nachman's opinion. We're very keen on because we often pass on that. We usually pass on Rav Nachman, right? Now, but what we're going to do now is the other guy is going to bring Adim to he also comes from his ancestors. Other Adim. So now what are you going to have?
Just on the ancestors.
Yeah, because they cancelled out on the thing. So now we've got a real problem.
He's not agreeing on anything.
Yeah, no. Now they're equally strong.
Yeah.
Now they've each got Adim to support their entire claim. So they were there for 3 years, and they came from their ancestors.
Might be even stronger if you've got two sets of Aiden. You've got one set.
No, because we say Trey Kamea. If I have one set of Adim, 2 Adim are like 100. So it's not going to help me how many I bring.
Oh, sorry, mate. The others did got rid of anyway. So,
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to come back to that in a minute.
Sorry.
Or can you not say there's a chashash big or the one set are safek lying, and the others are there's no concern on their kashrus at all. Or we say now once we hold like Rav Nachman, there's no safek at all. The testimony is accepted, even though half of what they say could be.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting point. I haven't seen that the Gemora deals with that in that way. The Gemora seems to take on that it's the same. They don't. They're equal. There's no. It doesn't lose points. You're trying to suggest that there's less credibility because you disqualified them in half their ages. But Rav Nachman doesn't go with that. Rav Nachman says no. We believe them in that point. So okay, well I'll come back to that. Let's see the Rashbam. The second line at the top of the Amud. Hamachisha zu ezu. So what does it mean? Contradict each other. Here the Rashbam gives us the definition, which we explained before, for contradictory edus. What does it mean, contradictory edus? The edus achas in one edus could go in. For example, the scenario is Sheidu Shnayim, 2 people testify, Ploni Lova me Ploni Mona. So and so borrowed from so and so a mona, a coin. And the other 2 contradict him. When they say Lo Lova mimenu klum, he didn't borrow anything from him. Because on that day, Sha'atem Omrim, that you say Shalova mimenu, that he borrowed from him, Hoya imonu halova kolosayom. The borrower was with us the whole day. V'lo lova mimishum adam klum, and he didn't borrow anything from anyone, right? But Edus kazeh, and in this type of Edus, lo yamino Torah ha'acharonim yosem and harishonim. The Torah did not believe the latter group more than the earlier group. Elo be'edus hazoma. Torah only gave greater credibility with hazoma. Gegon shemeidim alo edim atzmum. When they testified about the Edom themselves, in one way, Yisem, you were with us, Mokum Ploni, in such a place, below Reisem Shalova, and you didn't see that he borrowed because you were with us. That's Edom's own room. So Rashbam does us a favor here, gives us a nice, clear definition of what it means, Eidei HaChosha. He's assuming that you've never learned Makkas, and therefore he spells it out clearly. Right, that's what we're dealing with. Zubo b'fnei atzon v'ida, kashar idios sheba olam. Like any other testimony in the world, okay? What is the logic? Let's understand now, as I said before, we've got to understand the svara. What is actually the machlokes here? Rav Huna says they can go and testify independently as long as they don't come together, but they can testify, each group can testify independently on another case. Why? Like any other testimony in the world, you don't assume that someone is posel because of a suffix. You know, why do you make someone posel? Why do you make someone posel? Why do you assume someone's posel? Now we've got to do this with the next Rashbam. Be'edus acheres. Another testimony, they can go and testify with something else. One person from each group cannot join together for a single edus. Because one of them is definitely posel. And all you've got is half an edus, because one of them is possible. But Tam de Rav Huna, keywords coming up. The reason, the svara of Rav Huna, mishum da'oki gavra achazoke, we assume a person has a cheskas kashrus, an assumption of being kosher, the lo tafsilenu misofik, and you cannot puzzle him out of doubt. Misofik, you have a sofik here. It's a big sofik, 50% of the line, but it's still a sofik. And you've got a chazaka. Why is a chazaka? Cheskas kashrus. Every person has a chazaka, they're kosher. You don't assume people are apostle unless you have it, right? And therefore Rav Huna says, comes along, they go to a basin for another edus, even though you're aware that the basin down the road has, if they're involved in a case where it's clear one of them will lie, doesn't matter. You got cheskas kashrus. What's the flip side? Before we do Rav Chisda, do you understand the funny? Chazaka is very strong thing in halakha. When you've got chazaka, I mean, there's a lot of lomdus about these type of things. What does it mean? Is a chazaka in sofik motzi midei vadai? Is that kind of the lomdus of it? Chazaka is like a vadai, and then you got a sofik on the other side. Is that there's a lot as to how it exactly works, but the basic idea, you understand, right? Chazaka is very strong in halacha. I'm a chazaka. Why are you coming along with sfeikas? I don't know about sofik. I know vadai. That's what we're saying, precisely. Okay. But what's the other side? Think about it. There's another chazaka in play here, somewhere in the air. Think about it. You'll kick yourself if you don't get it. No, there's another chazaka in this case, the new case that they're testifying about, assuming it's a choshen mishpat case, which is throwing a bit of a spanner in the works. I'm meaning there's another side to this. One chazaka is cheskas kashrus. People are kosher. We don't assume people are possible unless we have a certainty, basically. We might have a sofek, but it doesn't mean they lose chazaka because of a sofek. But there's another chazaka, a chazaka that applies specifically to monetary cases.
Oh,
Yeah, precisely, Richie, absolutely. Meaning there's cheskas momoina. We are coming along with Eidim, right, on the basis of their cheskas kashrus, okay? Cheskas kashrus, and you're using that chazaka, even though there's a suffix as to whether they might be treif, right, to be motzi moment, to take money away from someone who's got a chazaka on their money, right, that it's theirs.
First, chazaka doesn't mean anything unless it means they kasher of the agent. So it must then override the first chazaka of what's the lefavera, because otherwise it's got no meaning. If you say that we can't override that second one, it's got no.
That's true. That's true. Right, but that's the machlokas here. Look, you'll see. We'll see the Rashbam because he explains.
In this case, they're both saying I've already got it. It's in my hand. The other guy's trying to say,
No. It's about the new case. You're right. And in this case,
are we talking about the Rashbam with the money?
I'm talking about when they go. Yeah. We're talking about Rav Huna of Chisda are not talking about a case of Cheskas Habatim. They're talking about another case, and we're talking about where the two sets of Eidim in Rav Huna and Rav Chisda's story are actually going to a new case. Well, that's the question, right? The question is their believability in the next case. Again, Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, what's the case? There's a case where they're machishim zeh, they contradict each other. They don't spell out what the case is. The Rashbam told us the case, right? Where there's a debate about where the borrower was or whatever. And then the question is, are they believed for a new case? Doesn't say what that case is either. We're talking about the new case, right? So Rav Chisda says, Rav Huna says, we've got Oki Gavra Chazoke. It's Chazoke's Kashrus. Now look at the next Rashbam. Rav Chisda Omar. Rav Chisda says, "B'hadli sadi shikri lomali." I don't want anything to do with these false eidim. V'lo yo'idu oid b'shum eidus ba'olam, and they cannot testify for any eidus in the world. Why? Because you put the money on its chazaka. V'lo tutzienu misofek, and don't remove the money from the other guy misofek shema ha'edim b'sulim, because maybe the eidim are possible. So. This is the machlokas. Right? See, it's beautiful. You understand? You got a Gemora. See what the Rashbam's done? You understand what the Rashbam's done? You got a Gemora. Well, you learn the Gemora Daf Yomi style. I'm a big fan of Daf Yomi, by the way. I'm a very big fan of Daf Yomi. But you learn the Gemora. You know what I mean? Like in a studio. So you see machlokas. Okay. Rav Chisda says. Rav Huna says you believe them. I'm just highlighting what we're doing, which you can't achieve necessarily in the quick exit, right? You see Rav Huna and Rav Chisda have a machlokes. Rav Huna comes along and says, well, you can leave them for another case. And Rav Chisda says, no, you can't, because since there's a contradiction, they're contradicting each other. In this case, they're completely disqualified. Great, lovely machlokes. But what is the machlokes? Well, why? Why does one say that? Why does one say that? So Rashbam here brings out what the Nekudas HaMachlokes is. The Nekudas HaMachlokes, the point of the machlokes is, which chazaka do you follow? Do we follow chazaka of a person being cheskas kashrus, That's what you put up on a pedestal. People are kosher. People are kosher. Why do you come along? Sophic, maybe. Who says? People say all sorts of things all the time, right? Cheskas kashrus, prove it. Without proving it, I'm going to assume this guy's kosher, and therefore I'm going to allow him to testify. And that's what you put up on a pedestal, right? Comes along Rav Chisda and says, no. What do you mean? You got a sophic here. There's clearly a sophic, and you're going to use that sophic to extract money. But I've got a cheskas. I've got chazaka on my money, as you say. You know, to remove money from my hand, you need a proof. You need a vadai, and you've all you've got is a sophic. You know, there's a sophic kosher edim. You haven't got a definite kosher edim, and therefore that okim omoina chazake is a reason, says Rav Chisda, to not believe the edim in another case. Martin, you're not happy with this. I'm interested to know.
I feel like with this apples and pears.
Okay. Why?
Because a mighty mechaber alav hara is the mechanism by which you bring Adam to prove whether or not you owe someone money or you get to keep money.
Okay.
And what we said, and we said that they are sophic. These Adam are sophic because there is a case they are being machesh in. And so what we're saying is because they're now not completely believed as Adam, they're not 100% reliable Adam, therefore they can't. I'm answering my own question, but they can't actually utilize the mechanism of Moitz B'Chaver Alav because they aren't fully qualified.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I don't know whether most of I'm trying to work out whether that helps us or not. It's all part of the same thing, but I don't know whether that it might complicate things to bring that in. To introduce the phrase might complicate things. At the end of the day, right? You bring me to court, and you say, right, that I owe you money, and to prove that, you produce these wonderful, upright, standing citizens. And I say to you in court, but yesterday, these two guys were down the road in the Old Bailey, and there's a 50% chance there that they were liars. So why on earth should they be strong enough to remove the money from my chazaka to pay you? They're definitely a sophic, and a sophic is not going to be mostly a chazaka from a chazaka.
Yeah, to me, Adis was black and white.
Adis.
You're an egg kosher, you're not egg kosher.
No, this is.
If only life was black and white. You're right. It's grey. Here it's grey. Yeah.
Or couldn't they just be both arguing about the single one chazaka, which is whether or not people are presumed to be innocent, and they're just arguing in the application of that chazaka, whether it applies or it doesn't apply. Why does it have to be a competing chazaka with multi-maker?
So that's a very good question. Can you answer the question? Sorry. No, think it through. Why is that not gonna help us? There's a logical reason why. I know what you want to say. You want to say, why do you have to bring in a separate chazaka? Just say the machlokas is about this chazaka. But then you haven't created what's the machlokas then? You have to have a basis. You can't just sort of take. If I take a position and you take a position, it's my job. Okay, it's our job when we learn Gemora to try and understand the basis of both sides of the argument. So it's not going to be good enough just to say. That's why the Rashbam doesn't say that. You're asking, why doesn't the Rashbam say that one opinion holds, right, that there's such a thing as cheskas kashrus and that defeats the sophic? No, it doesn't hold a cheskas kashrus.
Or on the fact, or on that fact, cheskas kashrus isn't there. If you see what I mean.
Well, because of the sophic. It's much harder to say that as well. Because again, if you want to, it's not good to narrow it down to certain specific cases, or when you're going to limit it to a certain set of facts or whatever. We always want to avoid the machlokas and metzias. You know what that means? We always want to avoid the machlokas on facts. We never want to in the Gemara generally. We never want a machlokas on facts because that's a real problem. Because someone's logically wrong.
On a 51 holds a 50-50 sophic is.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. I have no idea what you're saying. I just think that we don't have enough of a background to it. But there's another issue here which I haven't picked up on, Martin, which I thought you were going to pick up on, but you didn't quite.
What's bugging me is now the Rashbam is saying this is pretty different. This dealing with because we have two two chazokas here.
Yeah.
How can we learn that back to our original case where it was not the second chazaka? So how can we even start to say, can we compare Rav Huna?
Right. Okay. Well,
because it's totally different, wouldn't it?
no. So we still have a machlokas between. No, all we've done is we've defined the machlokas between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, and we've said that their machlokas is based around which chazaka do you believe?
Which has nothing to do with the previous one.
Why is it nothing to do with the previous one?
Because the other one only has one chazaka with the land. Because there's no moitzi. They both coming and saying it's in my hand already. There's no moitzi.
So you mean because here we're trying to use them for the other part of this chazaka, of this story, not chazaka, this story, which was the saying that belongs to his ancestors, right? Now Rav Chisda, we said, so Rav Chisda goes after the chazaka of the money. Rav Chisda says the chazaka belongs. We go after the chazaka of the money. Where's the chazaka of the money? That's with the person now. So you're saying that here there's no chazaka. But here Rav Chisda, but Rav Chisda then that means Kol Shekin Rav Chisda is not going to say. It's going to say you can't believe them, which is what we say in the Gemara anyway. Remember, Rav Chisda says we say Rav Chisda says I want nothing to do with these eight. Okay, that means even when there is he completely disregards the chazaka of the government. He says, I want nothing to do with it, right? I want nothing to do with it, right? And that means that we're not going to allow him, we're not going to believe them at all. And we're not even going to believe them when they say it belongs to this guy's ancestors. And you're saying that's not being motzi moment. Is that what you're saying? You're not extracting money.
Yes, we know there's no extraction at all.
I'm not sure. Why is there no extraction? Maybe they each have a chazaka.
Both of them had Eidos saying that they worked the land. They actually both have physical possession of it. They're both coming and saying, I physically have possession of the land.
And we discounted that.
All we're arguing now is which one's ancestors originally owned it. We are not arguing in the Metzias of who actually has the land.
Right.
And my point is that I don't know why we're trying to say, is this argument the same as this argument? Where we just said this bottom one is arguing about two chazokas.
You're asking according to the Rashbam.
Two chazokas in the first one. So we should just say, no, we're not arguing about that. Totally separate argument. Let's go back to understanding Rav Nachman and Rabbah separately.
I thought the debate wasn't
So
about
I-
actual possession for that.
I don't tell them because I thought
One second,
we were
one.
talking about the capability of the agent,
Yes.
which is not like it's Rav Chisda.
Yes, that's the achlokas.
So according to Rav Chisda, you chuck all of this. There's no maskana from our original case.
No. But I think what Jonathan Johnson says, if you're saying that Rav Chisda's argument is that he says the reason why you can't believe them in another case is because the other guy has a cheskas momon. So in a situation where the other person does not have a cheskas momon, such as here, because we're assuming this is what I'm not so sure about. You're saying there's no cheskas momon because they're contradicting each other.
That's an assumption.
Yeah.
That could be wrong,
Yes.
but it just doesn't.
Yes.
And then maybe there's another one.
Yes. Okay, so just hold on to it for a second, because there's another fundamental issue which arises from this Rashbam about cheskas momon, and that is, what about if they were testifying in a case where there was nothing at all? I suppose this maybe is your question, because that question is asked on the Rashbam, right? There is a Tosfos in Bava Kama, Ayin base, Omid base. One second.
It's not Choshen Mishpat.
No, so there are one second. So Tosfos in Bava Kama says, I'm just reading from my notes that I've got here. He says that that the Adim would be believed to be machzik moment, right? To keep moment where it was now, where it was already. In other words, if it's not a case of being motzi moment, then Rav Chisda would agree they could be believed, which would it's exactly the point you're making, right? For example, what would be a case of that? Let's say the Adim come into Beis Din in another case and they say he never borrowed money. That's the testimony they give. So and so never borrowed money. So according to Rav Chisda, if the whole thing is he says you can't believe that to be motzi moment, not being motzi moment, they're just saying Ruvain never borrowed anything, right? So and we wouldn't be motzi the moment. Yeah. So therefore, that's right, and that's why the Rashbam says this phrase: you can't be motzi moment, right? Yeah. So basically, this Rashbam implies that this Tosfos, but whether or not whether that creates a problem for our case is an interesting issue. The Gemora doesn't seem to go down that route. The Gemara just says, according to Rav Chisda, everyone agrees. Everyone agrees, right? But there's no that it's.
Or you could flip my case and actually say there's not that there's no moist, it's actually two.
Yes, that's exactly it. It could be. Maybe that's why the Gemara doesn't. The Gemara treats it that way because ultimately they're both arguing a chazaka, even though they've got contradictory edim. Interesting. Yeah. Did you want? Was that okay? So this is the machlokes, how the Gemara how the Rashbam explains the machlokes in Rava between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Now let's carry on the Rashbam. Leimo says the Rashbam Rav Nachman. Let's say the Rav Nachman shemachshe edus ta'avosa, who is machshe edus of the ancestors shehi idu edim choshim, that the contradictory edim testify about zahainu edus acheres shelo huchshu boy. Because this is another edus that they weren't contradicted in. They weren't contradicted in. Because Rav Huna, he holds Rav Huna shechshiram beidus acheres lo chshuba. Because Rav Huna is machshir them for another edus in which they weren't contradicted. So let's line up Rav Nachman like Rav Huna. Someone says no. So that each one should be able to say, I hold like Rav Chisda. The father Rav Nachman lo shvilik Rav Chisda. Rav Nachman definitely cannot hold like Rav Chisda. The Rav Chisda, afilu beidus acheres ba'alma posel. Rav Chisda puzzled even in a completely different edus. Kolshkem edus da'avosa. How much more so in a scenario of edus da'avosa shehuchshu edim me'achila, when the edim were contradicted from the eating bit already, but also edus shaloso karka, in that testimony of that land. It's obvious that Rav Chisda is not going to believe him. You see, it could be, that there's another point here, which the Gemara goes down, almost like goes down a different route. The Rashbam gives us an analysis of the machlokus. One goes after Cheskas Momon, one goes after Cheskas Gav. Okay, that's the machlokus, right? But you still have an overarching kind of sense that Rav Chisda is not happy with relying on these edim in another scenario. So in our case, even if it's not being motzi momon, right? To come along, to say that Rav Chisda would potentially allow, right, or believe edim when he makes this statement here, Bahade Sadi Shikri Lomali, I don't want anything to do with these false edim, seems a bit difficult to believe. It could be that the Gemara is just going down that line. Do you understand? Like, even though technically it's not being motzi momon here, but to carve up the edus itself, it's too much of a shift in his view from not believing them even in a totally different scenario to suddenly believing them even in an element within the same edus. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think for me, I'm not going down the point of we don't know who. What I'm saying is we don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's a totally different scenario.
Yeah.
We can't learn anything from
Yeah. I hear. Yeah. I'm just saying maybe that's the resolution. Okay, Gemara carries on. Rashbam carries on. But also edus to also karka atzmo lo. In that testimony of that karka, no, right? Not the hilchos of Nachman and the halachas of Nachman. Sharei nifsak hadin alpiv. See, the Rashbam has these words that it's from the Maharsha as listen. The halachas of Nachman because the halacha is paskin according to him. As we see later on, anon achtinon. Rav Nachman says we put them in the land. I put them in the land. I paskin that the one who has edus of his ancestors gets the land, right? That's Rav Nachman's psak. You with me? Remember, right? Yeah, you just can't. But Rav Nachman, halacha is like Rav Nachman. That it's good enough to believe. You believe the edim on the others, and again, like we said, that's in Rav Huna. Now I said to you before. Pardon? On the edus that they gave, that it belongs to this one of the guy's ancestors. Remember, only one set had edim that it belongs to his ancestors. So you discount the contradiction in the 3 years, and you just go with the Yeah, exactly, right? And that's the halacha. That's halacha. Now, the Gemara is going to reframe the case, but I don't want to go into the whole next piece. I want to do a Tosfos. What was that?
The proof on the ancestors, or is it just Adis?
Is there proof on the ancestors? Adis is the best proof. If I have proof that my ancestors used to own the land, then my ancestors used to own the land.
And if you don't have Adis, you don't have proof.
No, then you're stuck. And we're going to see later on when they both contradict. That's something else. But at the moment, we're assuming,
So
right?
You have some sort of proof.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. That's what Nachman says. Take the land. Therefore, he gets the land.
So the present day machlokas is unsolvable as such. You can't.
That's correct. That's correct.
So the only.
That's correct. So Rav Nachman says that the whole machlokas was, can you divorce that from the rest of it? Exactly. Yeah, from the Be'er and the ancestors. And Rav Nachman says you can. And then you go, that's easy. Yeah. That's right. Now, if you look at this top, I don't want to go into the next piece, which is like the second stage of the whole sugya, because then we won't have time to do it. So let's just look at the top Tosfos. Zubov if now going into Rav Nachman. Tamor, I'm sorry, Rav Chisda. Tosfos asks, Bein Rav Huna, Bein Rav Chisda, whether Rav Huna or Rav Chisda, name Ninu leBasroi b'Migoy. You should believe the second set, with the following Migoy. Migoy di boy paslinu lekamoi begazlanusa. Migoy, since they could have disqualified the first set by saying they were thieves, they were gazlonim. You understand? So what are we saying? We've got two sets of Eidim, okay, who contradict each other, right? Contradict each other. And what did they do? They came along and they said, one of them says, so Reuven borrows from Shimon. And the second set says, Reuven could not have borrowed from Shimon because Reuven was with us, so he could not possibly all day, and he never borrowed any money, right? Okay. Now there should be a migoy, and a migoy should assist the second set of Eidim. Migoy, they could have said, the migoy, they could have just come along and be made that the first set were gazlonim. What happens if that happens? I come to base.
That's shame all kinds of stuff.
Okay, but it's fine.
Yes,
Eidos, they do second set. No. If you have two Eidim, there are Eidim in Beis Din, right? They testify about a case. Reuven borrowed money from Shimon. Two other Eidim rock up the next day and say, those two Eidim who testified yesterday, we testify that they are shoplifters. What's the halacha? What? Who do you believe? They disqualify the second set. They disqualify the first set. It's 2 against 2. It's not 2 against 2. Because they're not arguing about a case. They're not arguing about a case. They are two Eidim who are disqualifying the second set. Person.
Because they're false, but they may not be prepared to say those guys are thieves. That's a totally different level of accusation. So I don't see where there's a migo.
No, but the point is, a migo is like this. If they were lying, the whole logic of a migo is if they were lying, it was in a better lie.
About this particular case because I'm friends with that guy. That doesn't mean I'm prepared to lie and say that guy is a thief. That's a different level of.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. But ultimately, it's not so far away. If you think about it, right? If they're lying, again, if they're liars, because that's the whole logic of a migo. If they were lying, you would have said a better. If they're lying, right? If you're going to lie, right, then it's not so far away to say I'm going to lie about this individual and say he didn't borrow money because we got us all day, and that's complete sheker, right? We can also lie and say they were thieves. I mean, it's not so far away. It's not.
Because at the end of the day, if you say they're thieves, you're making an accusation about those people that they're thieves, which is totally complete. It's a different thing to say. In this case, we say that this.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Tosfos doesn't seem to go down that route, but I hear what you're saying. Look what he says. What?
It's a really stupid question. But why can't the people who they say we all think two guys, if they know we're not, why can't they cancel that?
You can't tell yourself.
Not this one.
Yeah, you have to think of it like this. There's such a thing called this. This is a very beautiful Tosfos actually. That's what I'm doing. You see, you can think like this. Eidei HaChosha, contradictory Eidim, is where they're testifying about the same object or person or case, and they contradict each other. There, you say 2 against 2. We're stuck. Checkmate, stalemate, whatever you want to call it, right? But if I've got a case where 2 people testify about a case and 2 others say something about them which happens to disqualify them, they're not. There's no contradiction between the Eidim. And if I've got 2, and if 2 Eidim testify in court that people are thieves, then that's it. So if they were lying the second set, you should believe the second set when they contradict the first set and say that he didn't borrow the money. So they are arguing about this case. Migo, since they could have said a better lie. If they were lying, they could have just disqualified them as being thieves and they would have been believed. That's what Tosfos says.
Then you're back to square one.
No, you're not. So you would believe the second set. The second set of Amigo is the first set don't.
To support or to prayer or con to enter your original base, to your original case.
What
So
do you
need
mean?
to find another set of Adam that proves either you do owe money or you don't owe money.
No, but the point is that we want to say like this. We're trying to work out who is more reliable, who is more believable, and the second set have a Migo. Yeah. Yeah, because they could have knocked out the first set, and therefore the fact that they didn't it means that logically they're not lying, and they're telling the truth, and that's why they didn't give the better lie. That's what a Migo is. Migo, if I was lying, I could have said a better lie, and I would have been believed straight off. But I didn't do that, so logically, I mean, I'm telling the truth, and that's why. Meaning, what we're saying is that the two sets of Adam are not equal. They're not equal. There is more reason to believe the second set than the first set. Because if the second set were the liars, they would have said a much better lie and they would have knocked the other guys out of court, literally.
But we can't go down
You're
that.
saying this
We
level
What?
can't-
Why not?
The Torah tells us that Adam Simon, the only time we ever believe the second set is
Oh,
if it
okay,
is-
nearly, not quite. I know, yeah, I hear what you're saying. One second, let's just see what Tosh says. I want to see if we finish it.
Of the Adis knockout to
Yeah.
validate the first set.
What?
You say-
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So
That's what they could have done. The meal.
second set on the first set.
That's what he's saying. Because the second set can't, the first set can't say about the second set because the second set hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
When they say that, when they say what they say, it's only the second set can say. The first set are there. Yeah, then they can say. But you can.
But then you're equal footing.
Well, one second. Let's just see what he says. Miu, but migoi boy hovi mazmilahu. Amigo, they could have made them zomin. See, this comes out zomin now. Lekole minu. That you can't believe them in. And Eli, this is close to your point. Diurem lahazimon. They're going to be afraid to make them mazim to mazim them. Pen yusmu gamhei. Once you start going down the Adam zomin routes, you run the risk of getting others doing the same to you. It's a dangerous business to say, oh, you were with us. Others come along and say the same thing. So they're not going to do that. So that's sort of in brackets. But nearly, this is Tosfos' answer. To migoi, b'mokem edim lo emrina. That you can't, a migoi doesn't exist, has no weight, has no strength if there's Adam opposing it. The migoi lo yochal l'sayom yoseh mishnei Adam. Because a migoi cannot support them more than two Adam. Va'afilo hoyu imoin kuf Adam ein ne'amonim. Even if there are 100 Adam, we said before, with the second set, it's not going to give them a greater reliability, believability to trey kameah, because two are like 100. And therefore, this is a very important Tosfos, because he comes out with the principle here that migoi b'mokum edim, which is similar to what you're saying, but even more so. A migoi b'mokum edim, you don't start, don't try. If there are edim opposing a migoi, forget it. It's not going to help you, because a migoi is never stronger than edim. Migoi is a logical argument. Since you could have said that can't be stronger than edim, that can never be stronger than edim, right? And if these second set had 100 Adam with them, it would give them no greater believability. It wouldn't help them anymore. So you can't. So Amigo is not going to help them then. A logical argument of Amigo is not going to help. He also says for after the vote, Amigo is actually not even possible here for a simple reason. Because they don't have the same mindset. And what one is going to say, the other is not going to say. So you can't say since they could have said they were thieves. You can't do that with two people. With one person, you can say if he was lying, he would have said a better lie. But you can't impute on two people the same thought set, the same thought process. They're not going to go through the same process.
They would have had to chat to come up with a lie together anyway as one unit. So like,
Yeah.
once they if they're lying, they discussed it together.
Yes.
Just would pick the different lie together.
You could argue that. You could have maybe argue that on the read, whatever. But these are the two approaches Tosfos gives. Number one is that Migo, you can't go down the route of a Migo because a Migo can't be stronger than Adam, and Adam here wouldn't help them, so therefore Migo can't help them. And the second is because a Migo itself, the logic of a Migo never works full stop. if you try and impute the same thinking on two people, right? There's a COVID Shurim with some Lambda say, but maybe we'll save it for another time. Okay, so next year, Mitzvah Shem, hopefully, I'll assume in 2 weeks' time. Okay. Have a good evening. What? Next week, yeah, we'll be busy. Okay.